When people think of strength, they often imagine noise. They picture the one who speaks the loudest, who dominates the stage, who fills a room with presence and energy. They think of the quick handshake, the broad smile, the confident voice that never hesitates. In our modern culture, the spotlight has been trained to shine upon the extrovert, the one who seeks energy from the crowd, who thrives in company, who feels most alive in movement and in social interaction. But I tell you this, the world needs introverts just as much. Perhaps in times of confusion, noise, and distraction, it needs them even more. An introvert is not a mistake of nature. An introvert is not simply a shy extrovert who failed to adapt. Introversion is a fundamental orientation of the psyche. It is not a flaw, but a way of being. It is not a lack of energy, but a redirection of energy, while the extrovert's current flows outward toward people, activities, and objects. The introvert's current flows inward toward thought, meaning, and depth. This distinction is not a matter of superiority or weakness. It is a matter of balance. A society composed only of extroverts would exhaust itself in endless activity and competition. A society composed only of introverts might drown in reflection and hesitation. But together, extroverts and introverts form a whole. They are the two poles through which the spirit of humanity moves. Yet the voice of society is often biased. It shouts about charisma, about boldness, about quick responses, about visibility. It rewards the one who pushes ahead. And in such a world, it is easy for the introvert to believe that something is wrong with them, that their quietness is a deficiency. But this is an illusion created by comparison. The introvert carries within them an invaluable strength, the thinker who sits in silence, the poet who listens to the stirrings of the soul, the scientist who spends years in patient observation. All are marked by introversion. The great discoveries and the profound works of art were often born not in the noise of the crowd, but in the silence of the study, the quiet of the forest, the solitude of the night. Consider the philosopher who wrestles with questions no one else dares to ask. Consider the artist who withdraws from the marketplace, listening instead to the whisper of an inner vision. Consider the scientist who spends long years in the solitude of a laboratory, seeking truths that no one else has seen. Each bears the mark of introversion, a turning inward, a refusal to be consumed by the noise of the moment, a fidelity to the depths. Why is this needed today more than ever? Because we live in an age of constant distraction. The radio, the screen, the endless chatter of news and entertainment, all of these pull us outward. Rarely is the mind left to itself. Reflection becomes rare. Silence becomes unfamiliar. And yet it is precisely in silence that meaning grows. It is in reflection that we discover who we are and what we truly value. The introvert is not distracted by every passing noise. They know the value of retreat. They can step back, take distance, and see the larger pattern. They do not simply react, they reflect. In a world that runs faster and faster, the introvert is one of the few who can say, stop, let us think, let us feel, let us remember what matters. Do not mistake quietness for weakness. Do not mistake reflection for passivity. For often, the one who appears still on the outside is in the midst of a great inner storm. Their silence is not empty. It is full of thought, imagination, intuition. Their calm is not ignorance. It is strength held in reserve. Introverts are often underestimated. In gatherings, they may speak little, they may appear distant, but when they do speak, their words can strike like lightning. The extrovert may speak 1,000 words in the time the introvert speaks 10, but those 10 words may carry the weight of truth. Loud. They invite us to listen, not only to others, but to ourselves. Think of the balance of day and night. The day is loud, active, filled with movement. The night is quiet, reflective, restoring. If we lived in day without night, we would collapse from exhaustion. And if we lived in night without day, we would never awaken. Introverts are the night to society's day. They bring rest, reflection, and renewal. Without them, culture would burn itself out. The strength of the introvert lies precisely in what the world often criticizes: the quietness, the preference for solitude, the tendency to reflect before acting. These are not weaknesses but hidden powers. They allow the introvert to perceive what others overlook, to resist the pull of the crowd, to hold fast to an inner compass, even when the outer world demands conformity. The extrovert may thrive in the marketplace, but the introvert carries a treasure that cannot be purchased, the treasure of the inner life. The world needs those who guard the flame of the inner world. And this is the task of the introvert, to remind us that meaning is not only found in action, but also in reflection. That wisdom is not only in the crowd, but also in solitude. That truth is not only in the outer world, but also in the depths of the soul. If you are an introvert, hear me clearly. The world needs you, not despite your nature, but because of it. Your quietness, your reflection, your solitude, these are not burdens to be overcome, but gifts to be embraced. You are not half a person waiting to become extroverted. You are whole as you are. It requires courage to remain true to your introversion in a society that celebrates its opposite. But in doing so, you remind the world of the richness of the inner life, the power of silence, the necessity of reflection. In the chapters that follow, we will journey deeper into these themes. We will explore the secret strengths of introverts, their imagination, their depth, their creativity, their capacity for love and leadership. But before all else, you must understand this: you are needed, your presence matters. The world would be poorer without you. Introverts are not broken extroverts. They are not waiting to be fixed. They are carriers of a strength that is quiet, subtle, and profound. They are guardians of the inner world, and through them, the world remembers itself. Chapter 2, The Inner World as Strength. There is a place within each of us that no one else can see, a private chamber of thought and imagination, of memory and dream. Most people visit this place only briefly, and often with unease. They prefer the noise of the outer world, the stimulation of company, the constant movement of events. But for the introvert, this inner world is not foreign, it is home. The strength of the introvert lies in their relationship to this inner home. Where the extrovert feels nourished by the outer world, the introvert draws vitality from within. They step into solitude not as prisoners, but as inhabitants of a rich and fertile land. What seems like withdrawal to others is, for the introvert, a return to source. I have observed many times that the inner world of an introvert is not empty, it is alive. Within it flows a river of impressions, images, intuitions. The introvert does not need constant external stimulation because they already live in a house filled with voices, visions, and reflections. Their silence is not barren, it is populated with depth. When society misunderstands introverts, it often does so because it cannot see this richness. Silence is mistaken for absence. Solitude is mistaken for loneliness. But introverts know better. They know that the inner world is as vast as the outer. They know that imagination can be as powerful as action, that reflection can shape destiny as much as deeds. The strength of this inner world becomes visible in many ways. Take, for instance, creativity. All true creativity requires a period of withdrawal. The artist must step back from noise to hear the quiet whisper of inspiration. The writer must retreat from conversation to listen to the voices within. The scientist must leave the marketplace to enter the laboratory of thought. Without this return to the inner world, there is no originality, there is only repetition of what already exists. Introverts are naturally drawn to this process. They're not afraid of their own thoughts. They know how to wait, how to linger, how to hold an idea until it ripens. They understand that truth does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers, and only the quiet ear can hear it. But this inner world is not only a source of creativity, it is also a place of healing. Life wounds us all. The noise of the outer world often deepens these wounds, pulling us into comparison, competition, and distraction. The introvert, however, has access to a sanctuary. In solitude, they can return to themselves, regain strength, rediscover balance. Where the extrovert may seek healing in company, the introvert finds it in stillness. It is important to say, however, that this inward turn is not always easy. To enter one's inner world requires courage, for within it lie not only visions and dreams, but also shadows and fears. The introvert confronts these more often than others. But this confrontation too is a strength, for by facing their own depths, introverts become acquainted with the truth of the psyche. They learn that within each of us lives light and shadow, wisdom and folly, love and fear, and this knowledge grants them humility and compassion. The extrovert may skim along the surface of life, but the introvert dives deep. They bring up treasures that others never touch. Their task is not to remain forever beneath the surface, but to surface with pearls that can enrich the world. Think of history. How many of the great advances were born of solitude? Newton under the apple tree, Einstein in quiet reflection, Beethoven in silence after his hearing was gone. These were not moments of emptiness, but of fullness. The world believes progress is driven by noise, but in truth, much of it begins in silence. The introvert understands that inner life shapes outer life. The thoughts we nurture, the images we contemplate, the reflections we pursue, these eventually crystallize into choices, actions, creations. A shallow inner life leads to shallow actions. A deep inner life leads to profound contributions. This is why I say the inner world is strength. Not because it shields us from reality, but because it equips us to meet reality with depth. Let me speak directly to those who sometimes doubt themselves because of their introversion. You may feel as though your quietness makes you invisible. You may compare yourself to those who move faster, speak louder, seem more noticed. But know this, while they rush to plant seeds on the surface, you are cultivating roots beneath the soil. Your work is slower, less visible, but it is no less vital. In time, roots give rise to trees, and trees outlast the passing noise of the marketplace. The world needs people who can pause, people who can step back from the immediate and ask, what does this mean? What lies beneath appearances? What is truly worth pursuing? Without such questions, society becomes shallow, running from one distraction to the next without ever understanding itself. Introverts keep these questions alive. They keep depth alive. Your inner world is your companion. It is the well from which you draw insight, resilience, and creativity. Cherish it. Do not allow a culture that worships noise to convince you that silence is empty. Do not allow a society that rewards visibility to convince you that invisibility is weakness. The inner world is not a prison, it is a sanctuary. It is not a hiding place, it is a source of strength. If you cultivate it, if you trust it, if you honor it, your inner world will become a gift, not only for yourself, but for all those around you. For the world is starving for depth, it hungers for meaning, and meaning is not found in constant noise, it is found in the quiet places of the soul, the very places where introverts dwell. So do not doubt your orientation. Do not wish to be someone else. Instead, turn inward with trust. Your inner world is not a burden, it is your power. And in honoring it, you honor a part of humanity that the world desperately needs. Chapter 3, The Silence That Speaks. There is a kind of power that does not announce itself. It does not enter a room with trumpets or bright gestures. It does not demand attention, nor does it push others aside. It waits, it watches, it listens. And when it finally expresses itself, it does so with such clarity that everyone present feels the weight of its truth. This is the power of silence. For the introvert, silence is not an absence. It is not emptiness. It is a language of its own, subtle, profound, filled with meaning. While the outer world often rushes to speak, the introvert allows space for silence. And in that space, things reveal themselves that are otherwise hidden. I have seen this again and again in conversations. Many people listen only to respond. They are not truly hearing, they are waiting for their chance to speak. But the introvert listens differently. They allow words to sink in. They hear not only what is said, but also what is unsaid. They sense the pauses, the hesitations, the undertones. Their silence creates a space in which the other person feels seen, heard, and understood. This is why introverts can form such deep connections. They do not overwhelm others with words. They invite others into a space of reflection. In their company, people often reveal more than they expected because they feel that rare gift, true attention. The world underestimates silence because it does not glitter, it is not loud, it does not entertain. But silence shapes human life more than we realize. Think of the pause in a piece of music. Without the pause, the notes blur together. With the pause, each note shines brighter. Silence gives shape to sound, meaning to speech, weight to presence. So it is with the introvert. Their silence gives weight to their words. Because they do not speak constantly, when they do speak, others listen. Their words carry a quality of necessity, as if they have been distilled from reflection. But silence is not only a gift to others, it is also a gift to the introvert themselves. In silence, they come to know their own thoughts, their own feelings. They are not swept away by the noise of the crowd. They remain in touch with their inner compass. And this gives them a kind of quiet confidence, not the confidence of display, but the confidence of grounding. Of course, society often misinterprets this silence. It calls it shyness, awkwardness, even weakness. But those who rush to judge rarely understand that silence can be a choice. It is not always born of fear. Often it is born of strength. For it takes strength to resist the impulse to fill every space with words. It takes strength to allow silence to exist without anxiety. Think of the great teachers and sages. Often they spoke less than their disciples wished. Their pauses were longer, their words fewer, and yet their silence carried more meaning than endless speech. The same is true of introverts in daily life. They carry within them a silence that speaks, not in noise, but in presence. There is another dimension to this silence. It can be healing. In a world of constant chatter, to meet someone who does not rush, who does not overwhelm, is like drinking fresh water. Their silence allows others to breathe. It creates space for reflection, for authenticity. Many people do not know how thirsty they are for such presence until they encounter it. The silence of the introvert is also a form of resistance. It resists the demand of society to always be visible, always be productive, always be entertaining. It says, I will not give you endless words just to fill the air. I will wait until I have something meaningful to say. And in this way, silence becomes a declaration of independence. But perhaps the greatest strength of silence is that it connects us to something larger than ourselves. In silence, we touch mystery. We feel the vastness of life beyond our small concerns. We sense the presence of truths that cannot be put into words. The introvert, by valuing silence, remains open to these dimensions. They remind us that not everything must be explained, not everything must be spoken. Some things are simply to be experienced in stillness. If you are an introvert, do not despise your silence. Do not force yourself to speak more than you wish just to match the rhythm of others. Trust your natural pace. When you listen, you give others the rare gift of being heard. When you wait, you allow deeper truths to surface. And when you do speak, your words will carry the authority of silence behind them. Your silence speaks. It speaks of patience in a world of haste. It speaks of depth in a world of surface. It speaks of presence in a world of distraction. And through it, you remind us all of a forgotten truth, that silence is not empty but full. So embrace it. Let your silence be your strength. For in the end, the voice that speaks most clearly is not always the loudest, but the one that has learned the wisdom of stillness. Chapter 4, The Misunderstood Introvert. Throughout history, there have always been those who walk more quietly, who turn inward rather than outward, who choose depth over breadth. Yet too often, these people have been misunderstood. The world, dazzled by noise and speed, struggles to recognize the strength of the quieter path. Misunderstanding begins early. From childhood, the introvert is often told to speak up, to be more social, to come out of their shell. The unspoken message is clear: who you are is not enough. The child learns that their silence is seen as weakness, that their preference for solitude is interpreted as a problem. And slowly they may begin to doubt themselves. But let us ask honestly, is it weakness to be silent? Is it failure to prefer reflection? Or is it simply difference, a different rhythm, a different orientation, a different way of being alive? I have studied many personalities, and I can tell you this: introversion is not a flaw to be fixed. It is a temperament, a natural expression of the psyche. To call an introvert shy or antisocial is to misunderstand what introversion really is. It is not the absence of courage or connection. It is the presence of inwardness, a turning of energy toward the inner world. Yet society persists in its misunderstanding. In schools, the child who speaks often is praised, while the one who listens deeply is overlooked. In workplaces, the employee who markets themselves loudly is promoted, while the one who contributes quietly but meaningfully may go unnoticed. In friendships, the one who tells the most stories is admired, while the one who asks the thoughtful questions is forgotten. This constant misunderstanding can weigh heavily on introverts. They may begin to feel that they must play a role that is not theirs, wearing the mask of extroversion to fit expectations. But masks are heavy. To wear one for too long is to lose touch with oneself. The truth is this: the misunderstanding of introverts is not born of malice, but of blindness. The world has grown accustomed to valuing what is visible, measurable, loud. It forgets that some of the most important forces in life are invisible, immeasurable, quiet. Gravity makes no sound, yet it holds the universe together. Roots lie hidden beneath the soil, yet without them no tree could stand. Silence cannot be counted, yet it shapes every word. So it is with introverts. Their gifts are not always obvious, but they are essential. Their strength is not always celebrated, but it is real. To misunderstand an introvert is to miss what they offer. For behind their silence may lie an insight that could change everything. Behind their solitude may be a creativity that will one day reshape culture. Behind their reserve may be a loyalty deeper than any crowd's applause. If you are an introvert, you know this misunderstanding well. You have felt the pressure to justify your quietness. You have heard the questions: why don't you talk more? Why are you so serious? Don't you want to join us? And sometimes you may have wondered yourself whether something was wrong. But I tell you now, nothing is wrong. You are not unfinished. You are not broken. The misunderstanding lies not in you, but in the eyes that cannot yet see you clearly. The task of the introvert is not to become extroverted in order to be accepted. The task is to accept themselves, to recognize the value of their nature, and to live from it with confidence. For once you do, the misunderstanding of others loses its power. Their misinterpretations no longer define you. I recall many patients who struggled with this tension. They came to me believing themselves inadequate because they did not match the model of extroversion praised around them. But as they learned to embrace their introversion, they discovered a strength they had never imagined. They became more whole, more authentic, more at peace. For wholeness does not come from imitation, it comes from individuation, from becoming who you truly are. The misunderstood introvert carries a secret gift. By being forced to live against the grain, they are driven to discover themselves more deeply. Their solitude gives them time to ask questions others avoid. Their silence teaches them to observe what others overlook. Their marginalization pushes them toward inner resources that become wells of creativity and wisdom. Paradoxically, then, misunderstanding can become the soil of strength. The very rejection that wounds the introvert can also shape them into someone profoundly resilient, someone who knows how to stand alone, someone who is not easily swayed by the crowd. But this strength is not automatic. It requires a shift in perspective. Instead of internalizing the world's judgments, the introvert must learn to reinterpret them. When someone says you are too quiet, hear instead, you know the value of listening. When someone says you spend too much time alone, hear instead, you understand the richness of solitude. When someone says you should be more outgoing, hear instead, you have chosen depth over noise. This reinterpretation is not mere positive thinking, it is truth. For every supposed weakness hides a hidden strength. The misunderstood introvert must learn to uncover these strengths and live from them without apology. In time, others will see. The same colleagues who once overlooked you may one day realize that your insights were guiding the team. The same friends who teased you for being quiet may later remember that you were the one who truly understood them. The same society that dismissed you may eventually celebrate you, as it has celebrated so many introverts in history. thinkers, artists, scientists, saints. The misunderstanding of introverts is deep, but it is not eternal. For truth has a way of revealing itself, and when it does, silence will be recognized as wisdom, solitude as creativity, reserve as strength. Until then, let the misunderstanding refine you. Do not allow it to shrink you, but let it deepen you. For every time you are misread, you have the chance to know yourself more clearly. Every time you are underestimated, you have the chance to build strength unseen. Every time you are overlooked, you have the chance to nurture treasures in secret. And one day, when the time is right, those treasures will be revealed. And the world, which once misunderstood you, will understand at last. So take heart. You are not alone in this experience. Countless introverts before you have borne the same misunderstanding, and yet they have changed the world. You too carry within you that possibility. Trust it, live it, and know that the quiet strength of your being is not diminished by the blindness of others. It shines even when unseen. Chapter 5, Creativity Born of Solitude. Every human being carries within them the seed of creation. Some create with words, others with colors, still others with music, invention, or new ways of living. To create is to participate in life's unfolding, to add something that did not exist before, to shape raw experience into form. And yet, creativity is not born in constant noise. It requires solitude, reflection, and silence. It requires what the introvert naturally carries. Society often imagines creativity as a burst of inspiration in a crowded workshop or a lively debate around a table. But the truth is simpler and quieter. The deepest creativity arises when the mind turns inward, when the noise of the world recedes and the subtle voice within can finally be heard. Think of the great works of art and discovery. Mozart composed in silence, hearing symphonies within before they reached the air. Van Gogh painted not as part of a crowd, but in long hours of solitude, communing with landscapes and his own turbulent soul. Newton discovered the laws of motion not in the marketplace, but in the quiet of the garden. Einstein conceived of relativity not during endless meetings, but in solitary walks and hours of reflection. Each of these figures lived at least partially in solitude, drawing from an inner well that could not be reached in constant distraction. This is not an accident. Creativity demands incubation. It is like a seed planted in the soil. If the soil is disturbed constantly, the seed cannot take root. But if left in stillness, protected and nourished, the seed will grow. So it is with ideas. They need time beneath the surface, away from the rush of conversation and the demands of noise. Introverts by nature provide this soil. Their solitude is not empty, it is fertile ground. You may have noticed this in your own life. Perhaps you have struggled to find clarity in a crowded room, but once you withdrew into solitude, answers began to appear. Perhaps inspiration came not when you were surrounded by chatter, but when you were walking alone or sitting in quiet thought or lying awake in the stillness of night. The mind, when freed from interruption, begins to weave. It begins to connect fragments into patterns, impressions into insights, images into visions. This is the hidden advantage of introverts. Because they do not fear solitude, they are able to give space for ideas to grow. Where others rush from one distraction to the next, the introvert lingers. They wait, they allow, and in this waiting, creativity emerges. But solitude not only nurtures ideas, it also sharpens perception. Introverts observe closely. They notice details others overlook. They sense patterns beneath the surface. They are not content with appearances. They wish to understand what lies behind them. This observational depth becomes the raw material of creativity. For creativity is not simply invention out of nothing, it is the reshaping of reality into new form. And the more deeply one perceives reality, the richer the material for creation. Yet solitude is not always comfortable. To sit with one's own thoughts is to encounter not only beauty but also shadow. Many people avoid solitude for this reason. They fear the silence because it forces them to meet themselves. But the introvert, by spending more time in solitude, becomes familiar with this meeting. They learn to navigate the inner landscape, to face their doubts and dreams, to wrestle with their contradictions. And out of this inner wrestling, new forms emerge: poems, paintings, theories, inventions, solutions. Creativity is often born of such struggle. There is another aspect of solitude that strengthens creativity. It liberates us from the expectations of the crowd. In company, we are always tempted to conform, to adjust ourselves to the opinions around us. In solitude, we are free. We can follow strange ideas without fear of judgment. We can imagine impossible possibilities without someone laughing. We can listen to the voice within without interruption. This freedom is essential for originality. Without it, we merely echo what has already been said. For the introvert, this freedom is a natural companion. They do not require constant approval. They do not need their every thought validated by others. They are willing to wait in silence, to nurture an idea in secret, to protect it until it is strong enough to stand in the world. Many of the greatest contributions to humanity began this way, as fragile visions protected in solitude until their time had come. Yet society does not always honor this process. It values productivity, speed, visibility. It wants results now, and it rewards those who appear constantly active. The introvert may seem slow by comparison, their creativity hidden, their work unfolding in quiet. But let us remember, trees take years to grow, and yet their presence nourishes generations. Creativity born of solitude is not a quick spark that vanishes, but a steady flame that endures. If you are an introvert, perhaps you have doubted your creativity. Perhaps you have thought, I am not inventive, I am not original, I do not create. But creation is not limited to art or science. To bring depth into a conversation, to offer a thoughtful solution in a meeting, to write a private reflection that clarifies your heart. These two are acts of creation. Every time you transform experience into meaning, you are creating, and your solitude gives you the space to do so. So trust it. Trust the quiet moments. Do not despise them or fill them with endless distraction. Let them work. For in silence, imagination stirs. In solitude, seeds grow. In stillness, the psyche creates. The world is hungry for such creations. It is hungry for depth, for originality, for insight. And you, by honoring your introverted nature, carry the very soil in which such creations can grow. Do not rush. Do not compare your rhythm to the rhythm of others. Nurture your solitude. Protect your inner world, for from it will come contributions that the noisy world, in all its haste, could never produce. Creativity is not a luxury, it is the essence of life expressing itself through us. And solitude, the natural territory of the introvert, is its birthplace. So remember this: every time you withdraw, every time you turn inward, every time you linger in silence, you are not escaping life, you are preparing to enrich it. And one day, The fruits of your solitude will nourish others, even those who never understood why you chose the quiet path. Chapter 6: The Courage to Be Alone. There is a difference between being alone and being lonely. And loneliness is a pain, a hunger for connection unmet. It is the sense of being cut off, forgotten, unseen. But being alone is something else entirely. It is not necessarily the absence of connection, but the presence of self. To be alone is to stand in one's own company without fear, without shame, without the need to fill the silence with distractions. This distinction is vital for introverts. For too long, solitude has been confused with loneliness, and those who choose to be alone are pitied or corrected. Society often says, "Why are you by yourself? You should go out more, you should talk more, you should surround yourself with people." The unspoken assumption is that solitude is a problem, a deficiency to be fixed. But I say solitude is not a problem, it is a power. It takes courage to be alone. Courage because in aloneness we meet ourselves, and many of us fear this encounter. We fear our doubts, our wounds, our questions. We fear what we may discover if the noise of the world falls silent. And so many people flee from solitude into constant company, constant activity, constant distraction. They would rather drown in noise than face their own depths. But the introvert, by inclination, does not flee so quickly. They know how to remain with themselves. They know how to enter the quiet and not be destroyed by it. And this is no small strength, for to live well, one must at some point confront oneself. One must listen to the inner voice, acknowledge the shadow, wrestle with the contradictions of the soul. Solitude gives space for this encounter, and the courage to be alone opens the door to transformation. I have seen in my work how many people collapse when they are left alone. They become restless, anxious, desperate for noise. They cannot bear the silence, for in the silence they hear truths they have long avoided. But those who can endure solitude, who can befriend their aloneness, discover treasures others never touch. They discover resilience, self-knowledge, clarity. They discover that they are not as fragile as they feared, and that within them is a source of strength independent of others. Introverts, by their nature, are drawn to this discovery. They spend more time alone, and thus they learn earlier that solitude can be a companion rather than an enemy. But this does not mean the journey is easy. Even introverts struggle at times with loneliness, with the longing for connection. Yet it is precisely because they know solitude that their connections, when they form them, are deeper, more genuine, more enduring. To have the courage to be alone is to stand against the pressure of society. We live in a culture that glorifies constant activity, constant communication, constant availability. To say, "I need to be alone," is often seen as strange, even suspicious. But this declaration is necessary, for without solitude, we lose ourselves in the noise. Without solitude, we forget who we are apart from the crowd. Without solitude, we never hear the quiet guidance of the soul. Consider how many breakthroughs in human history have come through solitude. The prophets went into the desert, the sages withdrew to the mountains, the poets walked alone at night. Each of them faced their solitude, and in it they found visions that shaped nations, inspired generations, healed hearts. Their courage to be alone was not selfishness, it was service. For what they discovered in solitude, they brought back to the world. The same is true for you. Your solitude is not an escape, it is preparation. When you withdraw, When you take time alone, you are not abandoning others. You are cultivating the self that will later return with gifts to give. To resist solitude is to resist growth. To embrace solitude is to open yourself to transformation. But let me also say this: solitude is not isolation, it is not rejection of others. True solitude is chosen, not forced. It is a rhythm, a balance, a breathing in before the breathing out. Introverts must remember this balance. Too much solitude can indeed become loneliness. Too little solitude becomes suffocation. The courage to be alone includes also the wisdom to return, to share, to connect. When you are alone, do not think of it as absence. Think of it as presence, presence with yourself, presence with life, presence with the deeper currents of existence. Sit quietly and notice what arises. Walk in silence and feel how the world speaks differently when not drowned in words. Write, reflect, dream. These are not idle acts, they are the work of the soul. And when you return to others, you will find that you bring more with you. You bring depth, clarity, authenticity. You bring the gift of having faced yourself and therefore being able to face others with honesty. Those who cannot be alone often cling to others, draining them with unspoken need. Those who have learned solitude can love freely without desperation, without masks. So I tell you, do not fear solitude. Do not allow others to shame you for it. Stand in it with courage. Let it teach you, shape you, deepen you. For in the stillness of being alone, you will encounter the most important relationship of all, the relationship with yourself. And from that relationship, all others will gain strength. The courage to be alone is not about rejecting the world. It is about preparing yourself to live in it more fully. It is about drinking deeply from the well of the soul so that when you meet others, you can offer them water rather than thirst. Introverts carry this courage within them. They know, even when the world misunderstands, that solitude is not a weakness but a gift. They remind us all that to stand alone is sometimes the only way to truly stand at all. So embrace it, trust it, live it. For solitude, when entered with courage, will not diminish you, it will reveal you. Chapter 7: Relationships Through the Eyes of an Introvert. Human beings are not meant to live entirely alone. Even the most solitary thinker longs at times for companionship, for understanding, for love. And yet, the way we approach relationships differs greatly depending on our nature. Extroverts often seek breadth, many friendships, frequent encounters, lively groups. Introverts, on the other hand, seek depth. They may have fewer connections, but those they do have reach the core of their being. This difference is not a defect, it is a gift. For what the introvert lacks in quantity, they more than make up for in quality. Their friendships, their loves, their bonds are often profound, enduring, and transformative. But because their way of relating is less visible, introverts are often misunderstood. Others may think them distant, aloof, or disinterested, yet nothing could be further from the truth. When an introvert chooses to connect, it is never casual, it is deliberate, meaningful, wholehearted. To be invited into the inner world of an introvert is to be entrusted with something precious. Let us look more closely at this. The introvert does not scatter their energy widely. They invest it carefully. They know that constant socializing drains them, and so they choose their companions with intention. They prefer a handful of true friends to a crowd of acquaintances. They value long conversations about meaningful topics over small talk that circles endlessly without depth. This is not because they dislike people, but because they honor connection too much to waste it on the superficial. If you have ever spoken with an introvert in an intimate setting, you know this truth. Their attention is not divided. They are not scanning the room for other opportunities. They are with you. They listen deeply. They remember what you say. They sense not only your words, but your silences, your hesitations, your unspoken hopes. And in this attentive presence, you may find yourself opening more than you expected. This is the gift of introverted relating. It creates space for authenticity. In love, too, the introvert's depth is a strength. They may not fall in love quickly, nor do they rush to declare it loudly, but when they give their heart, they give it fully. Their love is not shallow infatuation, but a steady flame that grows stronger with time. They do not seek constant novelty. They seek meaning. They do not need endless displays. They need truth. To be loved by an introvert is to be seen in your depths and accepted there. This depth of connection also means that introverts are often loyal companions. They do not easily replace one relationship with another. They do not forget quickly. They carry with them the memories, the shared meanings, the bonds that have shaped them. This can sometimes make loss more painful, but it also makes love more enduring. Yet here too lies a challenge. Because introverts value depth, they may sometimes hesitate to begin relationships. They know what it costs to open their inner world, and so they may guard it carefully. Others may interpret this as coldness, when in truth it is reverence. The introvert does not enter relationships lightly because they take them seriously. In friendships, introverts may prefer the one-on-one meeting to the group gathering. They may enjoy long walks with a trusted friend, deep conversations late into the night, shared silences that do not need to be filled. These moments nourish them far more than a dozen shallow exchanges at a crowded event. In family life, introverts often serve as anchors. They may not always speak the most, but their presence brings stability. They listen when others rush to speak. They reflect when others react. Their calm steadies the storm. In professional relationships, introverts may be overlooked in noisy meetings, but in smaller settings, their insights shine. They may not dominate the room, but they influence it subtly, often through thoughtful questions, quiet observations, or the quality of their attention. Those who work closely with introverts often realize that their contributions are indispensable, even if they are not always the loudest voice. What then can we learn from the way introverts approach relationships? We can learn that connection is not measured by quantity, but by quality. We can learn that to truly know another person requires patience, attention, and silence. We can learn that love does not need constant display but steady presence. If you are an introvert, do not think of your way of relating as inadequate. Do not compare your smaller circle to the larger crowds of others. Instead, honor the depth you bring. Cherish the few but profound relationships you cultivate, for these will sustain you more than 1,000 acquaintances ever could. And if you are someone who loves an introvert, learn to appreciate their way. Do not demand constant talk. Do not mistake their silences for absence. Instead, trust that their quietness hides deep feeling. Recognize that when they open to you, it is not casual, it is sacred. The world often praises the extroverted way of relating, broad, visible, frequent, but it also desperately needs the introverted way, deep, authentic, rare. Without it, relationships become shallow, fleeting, easily discarded. Introverts remind us that connection is not about how many people we know, but how deeply we know them. So let us not misunderstand the introverts' relationships. They are not cold, but warm, not scarce, but concentrated, not weak, but profound. They reveal a truth we all need to remember, that love and friendship are not measured in numbers, but in depth. And in this way, introverts, through their way of relating, teach the world a forgotten lesson that the heart does not need many voices to be full. It needs only a few, heard deeply, cherished truly, loved completely. Chapter 8, The Secret Leadership of Introverts. When people imagine a leader, they often imagine an extrovert. They see someone standing on a stage, voice carrying across a crowd, gestures confident, presence magnetic. They think leadership is the ability to command attention, to inspire through charisma, to dominate the room. And indeed, such qualities can lead, but they are not the only way, nor even the deepest way to lead. There exists another form of leadership, quieter, less visible, but no less powerful. It is the leadership of the introvert. It is not based on noise, but on presence, not on charisma, but on integrity, not on display, but on depth. The world often overlooks this form of leadership because it is subtle. Introverts rarely seek the spotlight. They do not hunger for applause. They are content to remain in the background, guiding quietly, observing carefully, influencing steadily. And yet, time and again, we find that some of the most enduring leaders have been introverts. Think of Abraham Lincoln, a man of reserved nature, yet whose quiet strength guided a nation through its darkest hour. Think of Rosa Parks, whose silent refusal to give up her seat became a spark for a movement. Think of Mahatma Gandhi, whose soft voice carried more authority than armies. Each of these figures led not through loudness, but through quiet conviction. What gives introverts this capacity to lead? First, their ability to listen. Where many leaders rush to speak, the introverted leader listens. They gather perspectives, they hear concerns, they notice what is unsaid, and because they listen, others trust them. For to be truly heard is a rare gift, and people follow those who grant it. Second, introverted leaders think deeply. They do not act impulsively. They reflect, they weigh, they consider. This gives their decisions a solidity that others sense. Even if one disagrees with them, one feels that their choices are not whimsical but grounded. This steadiness breeds confidence in those who follow. Third, introverts are less tempted by vanity because they do not crave constant attention. They can focus more fully on the work itself, on the mission, on the people they serve. Their leadership is less about themselves and more about the whole. And this humility gives their authority a special kind of authenticity. Fourth, introverted leaders lead by example. They may not always deliver stirring speeches, but their lives speak. Their consistency, their integrity, their quiet perseverance inspire others more deeply than words ever could. For people follow not only what they hear, but what they see. And in an introverted leader, they often see authenticity. Of course, introverts face challenges in leadership. They may hesitate to step forward. They may feel drained by constant visibility. They may doubt their capacity to lead in a world that equates leadership with extroversion. But these challenges can be met, and when they are, the result is a form of leadership uniquely suited to times of change and uncertainty. For when noise grows unbearable, people long for quiet authority. When confusion reigns, they seek those who think deeply before acting. When trust is scarce, They look for those who lead not for fame, but for service. In such times, introverted leadership shines. If you are an introvert, you may not see yourself as a leader. You may assume that leadership belongs to others, the louder, the bolder, the more visible, but do not be deceived. You carry within you the qualities of true leadership: attentiveness, reflection, integrity, quiet strength. You may not seek the role, but sometimes the role seeks you. And when it does, you will find that your way of leading, though different, is deeply needed. You need not imitate extroverted leaders. You need not shout to be heard. You need not dominate to guide. Lead in your way, through listening, through presence, through authenticity. People will follow because they feel the truth in you. The secret leadership of introverts lies precisely in its difference. It does not compete with extroverted leadership. It complements it. It offers an alternative, a balance, a reminder that there are many ways to guide. Without it, leadership becomes shallow, driven only by appearances. With it, leadership gains depth, wisdom, and humanity. So do not doubt your capacity to lead. Whether in your family, your community, your work, or your society, your quiet presence can be a compass. Your thoughtful words can be a light. Your consistent actions can be a foundation on which others stand. Leadership is not about being the loudest voice, it is about being the truest voice, and this introverts know how to be. Chapter 9: The Inner Voice of Intuition. Within every person there exists a quiet guide, an inner voice that does not shout but whispers. Some call it instinct, others call it gut feeling. I have called it intuition. It is the knowing that arises without reasoning, the sense of truth that appears before words, the sudden recognition of a pattern invisible to the eyes but felt in the soul. For the introvert, this inner voice is often especially strong. Why? Because intuition requires space, it requires silence, it requires a turning inward away from the constant noise of the outer world. The extrovert, busy with the external, may overlook it, but the introvert, dwelling in reflection, listening in quiet, becomes more attuned to it. Intuition is not magic. It is the psyche's deep perception, the fruit of unconscious processes that gather more than we consciously realize. Every experience, every impression, every subtle detail that slips past our attention is stored within us. Intuition is the way this hidden knowledge surfaces. It is the moment when the unconscious whispers its wisdom to the conscious mind. Introverts often rely on this inner compass. They do not rush to decisions. They wait, they sense, they allow the inner voice to rise. And when it does, it guides them with a clarity that surprises others. They may not be able to explain exactly why they know, but they know. And time often proves their intuition right. This is not to say that extroverts lack intuition. It lives in all of us. But introverts, because they honor silence, because they turn inward, because they value reflection, give intuition the room it needs to be heard. Consider how many breakthroughs in history came not from logical steps alone, but from intuition. The scientist struggling with a problem for years suddenly sees the solution in a dream. The artist, unsure of their next work, suddenly envisions it whole. The thinker searching for meaning suddenly feels a pattern emerge. These moments of illumination are the fruit of intuition, and they often come in solitude, when the conscious mind is quiet enough for the unconscious to speak. For introverts, this is familiar territory. Their inner world is not silent. It is alive with impressions, associations, images. They walk through life not only seeing what is visible, but sensing what is hidden. This sensitivity can feel overwhelming at times, but it is also a gift, for through it they perceive truths others overlook. Intuition is especially valuable in relationships. An introvert may sense the mood of a room, the unspoken feelings of a friend, the hidden tension in a conversation. They hear not only the words spoken, but the undertone beneath them. This makes them attentive companions, perceptive friends, insightful leaders. Intuition also guides introverts in their creative work. They may not always plan logically step by step. Instead, they follow the inner sense of direction, trusting that the pieces will come together, and often they do in ways more profound than logic alone could produce. But intuition requires trust. It is easily drowned out by doubt, by overthinking, by the demands of a society that insists every decision be justified with reasons. Introverts must learn to value their inner knowing, to give it weight, even when it cannot be explained. This does not mean ignoring reason. Intuition and reason must work together, but it does mean giving space to the whisper within and recognizing its worth. If you are an introvert, you have likely felt this inner voice. Perhaps you knew something about a person before it was spoken. Perhaps you sensed a decision was wrong even when others insisted it was right. Perhaps you felt drawn to a path without being able to say why. This is your intuition. It is not foolishness. It is wisdom rising from the depths of your psyche. Trust it, honor it. Do not dismiss it simply because it lacks immediate explanation. With practice, you will learn when it is true and when it is clouded by fear. You will learn to discern the voice of intuition from the voice of anxiety. And as you do, you will discover a source of guidance more reliable than the shifting opinions of the crowd. The world needs this. In times of confusion, when facts are many but clarity is scarce, we need those who can sense direction from within. In times of change, when the old maps no longer guide us, we need those who can listen to the compass of the soul. Introverts, through their attunement to intuition, serve this role. They remind us that knowledge is not only external but also internal. That wisdom is not only in data but also in silence. That truth is not only discovered but also intuited. So, introverts, do not doubt this gift. Your inner voice is not weakness, it is strength. It is the quiet partner that has guided you through life more often than you realize. Listen to it more closely, trust it more deeply, for in doing so, you not only honor yourself, but you also bring into the world a wisdom it desperately needs. The inner voice of intuition is the soul speaking, and those who learn to hear it, to trust it, to follow it, they become guides not only for themselves but for others. This is the secret power of the introvert. Chapter 10, Embracing Your Introverted Power. As we come to the end of this reflection, let us return to the beginning, the question of strength. The world tells us that strength is loud, visible, commanding. It praises those who are quick to speak, eager to lead, constantly present in the crowd. But strength has many forms, and one of its quietest, most enduring forms lives within the introvert. Introversion is not a problem to be solved. It is not a stage to be outgrown. It is not half a life waiting for completion. It is a whole orientation of being, a way of seeing, of feeling, of creating, of relating. To embrace your introverted power is to stop apologizing for who you are. It is to stop measuring yourself against a standard that was never meant for you. It is to stand firmly in your own rhythm, your own depth, your own truth. What then does it mean to embrace this power? First, it means honoring your inner world. Do not treat your need for solitude as weakness. It is your strength. It is the soil where your creativity grows, where your intuition speaks, where your soul renews itself. Protect it. Give it time. Do not let the demands of the outer world rob you of the nourishment that comes from within. Second, it means valuing your way of relating. Do not compare your small circle of deep relationships to the broad networks of others. Your way is different, but no less important. The world needs both breadth and depth. Your capacity to form authentic bonds, to listen deeply, to love steadily, these are treasures. Do not diminish them simply because they are quiet. Third, it means trusting your silence. You need not fill every space with words. Your silence is not empty, it is full. It shapes your speech, it deepens your presence, it heals those around you. Do not despise it, let it speak in its own way. Fourth, it means recognizing your leadership. You may not seek the spotlight, but your integrity, your thoughtfulness, your quiet strength guide others more than you know. Do not assume you cannot lead simply because you are not loud. Lead in your way by listening, by living authentically, by acting with conviction. Fifth, it means listening to your intuition. That inner voice is not foolishness, it is the wisdom of your depths. Trust it, let it guide you. It will often lead you where logic alone cannot. To embrace your introverted power is also to accept the misunderstandings of others without being defined by them. People may call you shy, distant, aloof. They may misunderstand your silences, your solitude, your depth, but you know the truth. These are not flaws, they are strengths. Do not waste your life trying to convince everyone else. Live the truth yourself, and in time, your presence will reveal it. Remember, too, that embracing your introversion does not mean rejecting the outer world. It means balancing it. There is a time to retreat and a time to return, a time to be alone and a time to connect, a time to reflect and a time to act. By honoring both rhythms, you become whole. The journey of individuation and the journey to becoming fully yourself requires this embrace. It requires that you take back the parts of yourself you have hidden or rejected and live them openly. For only then can you stand as a complete being, neither imitating others nor denying yourself, but living from the center of your own truth. And what happens when you do? You become a light, not a blazing firework that dazzles for a moment and fades, but a steady flame that warms, guides, and endures. People may not always notice you first, but they will feel your presence. They will sense your depth, your authenticity, your quiet power. And in a world of noise and haste, they will be drawn to it like travelers to a lantern in the dark. So let me say this clearly. The world needs you. It needs your reflection in a time of distraction. It needs your depth in a time of shallowness. It needs your patience in a time of haste. It needs your authenticity in a time of masks. It needs your quiet courage in a time of loud fear. Do not doubt your worth. Do not try to become someone else. Do not silence the voice within you simply because the outer world is loud. Stand in your introversion. Embrace it fully. Live it without apology. For in doing so, you do not only free yourself, you free others who are waiting for permission to do the same. In the end, strength is not about noise, it is about truth. And truth does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it waits in silence until we are ready to hear. Sometimes it dwells quietly in the soul of an introvert, shaping the world from within. So walk your path with confidence. Trust your rhythm. Honor your solitude. Cherish your depth. Speak when you are ready, and let your words carry the weight of silence behind them. Lead when the moment comes, and let your leadership be grounded in authenticity. Love deeply, listen attentively, create faithfully. This is your power. This is your gift. And the world, though it may not always recognize it, is richer because of you. Embrace it, live it, be it. For the power of the introvert is not small, it is vast, it is profound, and it is needed now more than ever.